All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. My name is Michael Lockyer. I'm the Vice President of Brand Development at the Independent Grocers Alliance, IGA, and welcome to our webinar, Solving the Fresh Department Puzzle, Data, AI, and Smarter Retail Decisions, featuring our Red Oval partner, Empower Fresh. We'll talk today about a couple of topics that are critical to the fresh category, starting with a discussion around the state of fresh. We'll talk a little bit about some of the operational stressors that happen in the fresh department or that are unique to the fresh department. We'll talk quite a bit about the Empower Fresh solution and importantly, results that other retailers like yourselves have found as a result of implementing the solution. But to get started, I'd like to welcome our guests, Robert Austin and Jesse Himango, and we'll let them introduce themselves. Robert, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Rob Austin, lifelong Kansas Cityan. Grew up in a produce warehouse and a Bob's IGA store here in Kansas City. Spent the last couple of 15, 20 years in technology space, and am just super excited to be able to marry the two, produce and tech, back together and start working with independents again.
Great, welcome, Rob. Jesse?
Hey, yeah, I'm Jesse Himango, second generation lifelong retailer. Have worked at just about every position in a grocery store, from pushing carts and bagging groceries up to most recently director of produce retail for Fresh Time Farmers Market out of Chicago. I got blessed with an opportunity to develop with one of the first tech persons out there to tackle produce through AI. So I'm very versed in what AI can do for a retailer, and that's how I kind of ended up here with Empower Fresh, developing all the tools that I always wanted and dreamed of, but never got to use. So that's kind of my motivation with being here. So produce guy at heart.
Always good to be to have the experience and then come back on the other side and help out and create things that you wish existed. So we're excited about that. But before we get started talking about some of those solutions, Jesse and Rob, I think it would be a great conversation to talk about the state of fresh. We know that IGA, kind of the brand ethos is all about local equals fresh. You can see behind me a photo from one of our stores, Nam de Moon, here in Atlanta, Georgia. Farmers market, 100,000 square feet. Produce, as you can see, is pretty much a big feature of those stores. So let's talk a little bit about fresh and the uniqueness of it versus center store. Now, what are the main drivers of shrink and waste in the fresh department? Let's start there. Jesse, I think you're up for that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to screen share a little bit, but maybe I'll start with kind of a question. How much waste do you guys think is really out there in the retail sector? There's a huge amount of waste out there for various reasons. The FDA chimes in, I think, with their most recent study, which was in 2010, that there's 133 billion pounds of food waste annually. And right now, about 10% of that is at retail. Majority of it, 37%, occurs at the household level. So if you think about it, really retail impacts both, of course, what's going on at retail, but also how much ends up in the trash in the fresh departments is largely controlled by care and handling. Not aging inventory at store level, and you can impact really 47% of it in totality. So that's definitely huge. Departments are very unique. They're not 12 in, 12 out like grocery and a lot of other places. So there's a lot of one of the reasons why we started in produce was there's the biggest gains to be made are in the manual processes that exist within the produce department today.
Hey, Jesse, and any background on why the last study the FDA did was in 2010?
Yeah, that's a good question. They set some goals by, I think, 20, was it 2030, I think they want to reduce, in 2015, there you go. They set a goal in 2030, they want to reduce that by 50%. There's some other studies that are more recent that actually show that 133 billion pounds has actually grown. It hasn't shrunk at all so far. So there's just a huge opportunity with human process, manual process, in the perishables in particular, to minimize food waste. And that wasn't really possible, I would say, until the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years because of the development of AI. You could go back in time, Michael, and 20 years ago, before the existence of AI, there were lots of folks trying to capture that, but they without AI, it's not really possible. They were treating it like a grocery department, and perishables are so unique for so many different reasons, right? Perishability, shrink factors, seasonality, all of those things, come into play when you're factoring in a fresh department.
And is that, in addition to that, is it just the sheer magnitude? I don't think any other category in the store has 133 billion pounds in general, let alone going to waste. So I would imagine it's quite a technical feat to do that, and without AI and without advanced analytics, wrapping your arms around 133 billion pounds is probably pretty complicated.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
cool.
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I was just as kind of a next question, maybe you're headed down this path. We talked about ordering and sort of what makes that more complex than center store?
Yeah, fresh in particular, produce especially. It's very unique. So much of it is seasonal. It's not the same day in and day out like a lot of the other departments. So there's so many changing faces, so many changing factors. Availability and weather. You could be in the middle of the greatest crop of your life, and one hailstorm or one bad storm in Washington can ruin all the cherries for the rest of the summer. So you're in a business where it's literally impacted all over the world by weather, and it's changing, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute sometimes. And there's also obviously geopolitical factors too, like tariffs and border crossings and things like that can impact your life unexpectedly as well. So it's an ever changing environment, and I would say people with experience that have been doing produce 10, 15, 20 years, they can get fairly good at those things over time, but there's a lot of generational reasons why we're kind of losing some of those individuals. There's just a major shortage in the generational workforce gap right now. It's just creating some shortages that everybody's dealing with. So
makes sense. So in terms of, sounds like, and we'll get to this, obviously, a good opportunity to take the data, the learnings, and use technology to help improve, like you said, if we're losing generational talent, if we're losing people who have deep years of experience who have learned this, right? Taking all those learnings, using technology to create a tool makes a lot of sense.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll go back, again, why produce a little bit. There's the biggest gains to be had because of the manual processes that exist. But if you look at all the market research, all the studies out there, produce is the #1 department on why customers choose to shop where they shop. And so if you can impact produce, it's 30% of the total store's net profit at the end of the day. So it's a huge factor in the success of a grocery store, but it's the #1 factor as to where people choose to shop. So that being our background, everybody that works with Empower Fresh is from the grocery industry, which differentiates us quite a bit. But that's why we're starting in produce and will naturally grow to the other fresh departments. We're starting in what counts the most.
And I'll add, we believe all of our fellow produce workers deserve this technology, not just the center store folks.
There you go, Rob. Sorry, you froze for a second. You're back.
Did you catch any of what I said?
We did,
You're
and
good.
actually it cut off at a great point where you said we believe that employees in the fresh category deserve this technology, not just in the center store. And then I thought you just dropped the mic.
I don't know how that happened. But let's go with it.
Good timing. So Jesse, okay, great.
Yes.
So very appetizing photo. Thank you.
Yeah, very appetizing photo, right? Everybody knows what the back room garbage dumpster looks like, or all those trash bins going back there, what they look like. But right now it's estimated that supermarkets are throwing away anywhere from 2.5 to 4% of their total net profits, and a majority of that is in the fresh department. So produce being one of the largest contributors to that. So it's again just emphasizing reason why we're starting in produce and why it is important, not only for profits, but also it's the right thing to do as far as like a food waste scenario goes, where we can lessen what we're putting into landfills by utilizing the latest technologies.
Makes sense. So in terms of kind of recapping, biggest, most important category in terms of influencing customer loyalty, perception of the grocery store, a big problem on the back end, both from what's sold into customers or shoppers, as well as what's thrown away in the back room, which I'm not sure where this is, but really looks unappetizing. And I'm pretty sure if you could ask any grocer if they would like to increase their sales by 2.5 to 4% of revenue, or at least even half that by doing something simple, they'd raise their hand and say yes.
Yep, absolutely.
So what are the causes then of obviously it's one thing to say there's 133 billion pounds of food waste, 16 billion pounds annually discarded from grocery stores. But we talked about all the issues of nature, et cetera. But at the grocery level, what are the stressors? What are the issues? Why is this happening?
Rob, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think the greatest percentage of it is just handling, and it doesn't always fall on the retailer's shoulders either. I mean, it's this stuff's perishable. It's the handling all the way from the grower shipper through the wholesalers into their lab. It plays a huge role in how successful they'll be with each category. But once it gets to them, they need to be able to manage it effectively. They need to know, they need to have the knowledge and the data, what they're going to sell. They need to be able to forecast. They need to understand what's coming. And all of that comes in the app in the form of data at your fingertips. And this is one of the things that's been missing forever in these fresh departments.
Yeah, so what, some of the things that are driving that, I'm going to jump in. Everybody's familiar. If you go on LinkedIn, go to any kind of a ZipRecruiter, job recruiter, anywhere, there's tens of thousands of grocery positions that are open. Everybody's kind of in the same boat when it comes to that. And there's a lot of factors that are driving that. Right now, outgoing boomers versus incoming younger generations, it's 5 to 2. That's a massive amount going out versus what's incoming. So, being able to hire that produce department veteran or grocery veteran off the street is almost impossible nowadays. When I was coming up through the ranks, sitting on the produce benches, we always had the next produce manager and the one after that and the one after that. They were all ready to go, either waiting for the next spot to open up or the next store to open up. That simply doesn't exist anymore. When we were opening 80 plus stores with Fresh Time, we were hiring produce managers off the street with no grocery background or very little, let alone produce background. So that's a major detriment. Everybody's dealing with the same thing. It's not necessarily unique to anybody. You probably have a bigger pick of the litter if you're in a suburban area versus an urban area. But the challenge today is to find people that are willing to commit, high character people that are willing to commit, and then be able to teach them and give them the tools to be successful in their first couple months or a year, knowing you're not going to find that 20-year, 30-year veteran out on the street anymore.
So Jesse, is some of that gap of 5 to 2, which is scary, is that
Right.
Demographics, that there's not enough to replace, or is that disinterest in the workforce, disinterested in the industry? Can you get a little bit more insight into what's driving that?
Simple mathematical incoming younger generations versus outgoing boomers right now. So there's a number gap in incoming, and they say that gap will exist until Gen Alpha starts entering the workforce. Once Gen Alpha starts entering, those numbers will even out, because outgoing boomers will slow significantly. Alpha is going to pick up. But you're absolutely right. What you're hitting on as well is also just the tenure, because that's also a problem. It's not just a workforce gap. Generationally speaking, you guys can read this over here, but hey, boomers were staying in places 10 years or 10 years plus. The further you go back, the longer that 10-year will extend to 15 years. You can hit 15 years by going not too far back in the future. Gen Z, well, then we'll short up a little bit. Gen X, you're at about 3 years per location. Gen Z, once you get to Gen Z, 1 year and 8 months. I mean, that's insanity. So because of the amount of jobs that are available, because everybody's hiring, I think the boomers were incentivized financially to stay longer at places. That definitely helped. There's no doubt about that. And then also, working in a grocery store may not be glamorous. It may actually be hard work, and that could also be deterring the younger generations, to get in. This isn't what I signed up for, right? So they're looking to hop to something easier. So again, the tenure, generationally speaking, it all speaks to why folks are hopping around and why everybody's constantly hiring and trying to train and retrain. And there's always a gap, and there's always a void that you're trying to fill from just from a labor standpoint.
So it's almost a triple issue, right? Of just the size, demographically, the math doesn't make sense. The behavior in terms of tenure, which is really interesting, and I kind of resent the fact that, actually, good news, I was 54 in January of 2025, so didn't quite make that. And then the industry. So I know that IGA participated with a lot of other retailers in the most recent Coca-Cola Retailing Research Council study that was all about labor. And so there's some work that's been started to how do we make grocery more attractive to the younger generations? But given that that's a big project, that's an issue too. So it sounds like labor is going to be an ongoing issue until when did Gen Alpha? When do they start being born?
Yeah, well, most of my kids, my younger kids, are Gen Alpha, so there's still a little bit of time. You're still looking at a decade plus before they start trickling in. So you got some time.
Wonderful.
And I think we need to also utilize technology to find ways to make them want to stay longer than 1.8 years. Like that's,
Yep.
If that continues in 10 years, there'll be no specialists anywhere. Right, we're just going to have a bunch of people working in grocery utilizing technologies.
So,
Yeah,
Rob,
absolutely. I think
go, Jesse.
I'll dovetail off of what Rob's saying there. The younger generations really expect technology. You'll hand them some old antiquated pen paper system, and they look at you like, "What the heck is this?" This generation grew up with computers. They grew up with cell phones, so. The younger generations in particular, they're expecting to work with technology.
Yeah. So Rob, I was going to ask you, given what you said in terms of sort of expectations, what role does leadership in the grocery industry in general, but specifically at store level too, what role do they play in recruiting and making staff want to stay? How do we increase that 1.6 number?
I think it begins with them themselves
And
embracing
that's
tech.
like the $1 million question, right? If you can answer that, right?
I think it begins with, arming them with technology that makes them embrace it as a whole, so that they can not only expect it to be used or expect it to be in their stores, but they participate in it. They understand it. Look, these technologies are affordable now, and they can be utilized in a lot of ways to help run these stores. And so, the higher the adoption all the way up the tree, the more effective the business is going to be as a result. So that would be my first would be, get ingrained in it and teach it along the way. And it helps you build culture that way. And like Jesse mentioned, I think majority of these younger folks are coming in, they spend a lot of time on technology in their spare time. They want to be working in it in their work life too. And I apologize if my mic, I'm getting all kinds of things going from a tech thing on my screen here with the GoToMeeting.
No problem. Apologies for that. So, obviously we talked a little bit about ordering and kind of the issue and having leftover and leaving the trash, et cetera. But, another key role of the produce manager is in ad planning. So can you talk a little bit about why that's, I guess, especially risky? My own career, spent almost 15 years at Coca-Cola. We didn't have the same ordering issues, the same issues that we talked about in terms of perishability. So can you talk a little bit about the ad planning process and potentially how data-driven models can help there?
Sure. Jess, you want that one?
Yeah, sure. One of the things we did build into our tool was some technology to help make the right decisions on a ad writing promotional platform. Talking to a lot of the directors out there, and speaking from experience, because I did this for many, many years. There wasn't a lot of science or a lot of data going into those types of decisions. Typically, when you talk to a produce director, hey, why'd you run that item on it? Well, we did the same item this week last year, so we're attempting to comp it. Everybody's focused on the comp, of course. Is you're only as good as yesterday's comp sales is typically how ad writing goes, or being a director or running a store goes, right? Everybody can relate to that. So there wasn't a lot of data going into the decisions that they were making. So one of the things that we've built into our tool is we're giving them the ability to set the price point that's going to meet their strategy. Whether that, hey Rob, you're getting some feedback there. Whether that's, hey, we want to drive the most units or the most cases, the most feet, in the door. Or, hey, it's a back page item and we want the retail that's going to drive the most dollars. We're going to help them find that retail that's going to match their strategy. We're going to show them what lift they're getting versus a regular non-ad week, so they can ensure that the items that they're advertising are meeting in efficiency. They're doing what they're intended to do, which is to drive business, to drive sales increases. And again, you'll run into instances where absolutely you're actually degrading your sales dollars, and you're then degrading your margin dollars because you have to invest at a price point to degrade your sales dollars. So there's a lot of losers, a double loss out there on decisions. So we're helping bring visibility to that. We're helping eliminate that. And then we're forecasting with you in real time just to make sure you're hitting all of your goals. And we're helping you accurately forecast each of those items at those price points by using a combination of business intelligence, BI tools, and a lot of AI to identify those key price points to make sure you're getting the lifts that you should and think you're getting. So we're doing things that would take a person hours to manually dig into and investigate, and we're throwing it all in front of you as you build the tool. And one of our approaches, because we are grocery industry folks, is that we're not trying to create new processes. There's a lot of other tech companies out there that'll create a whole process to try to save you money. And what we've noticed is that when you try to create an extra step or an extra process, people typically they might use it when they have time, but when they don't have time, they're not going to use it. So everything we've done from, hey, the ad write tool to AI assisted ordering, et cetera. It's done with the intention and the purpose of, we're not creating any new processes. We're taking the existing processes that you guys are already doing, and we're just adding a lot of efficiency. We're adding a lot of power, and we're making it a way more effective process than it would be manually, or doing it in Excel, which is typically what everybody does. And I was guilty of that too, right? Running a big corporate chain, and we were managing our price book out of an Excel book that we had that thing macroed and duct taped 6 ways to Sunday. And if it ever broke down, the company would go down with it, right? So we remove those types of processes and make it more effective and more efficient.
Well, I've still seen stacks of paper for order writing for ads, not necessarily in the produce section, but in general. So there's while I applaud the thinking behind no new processes, I think there's definitely chances for improvement in processes overall. But I think you're right. We're all habitual by nature, and if you give somebody a new tool and say it's a new tool and we're changing everything that you've been doing process-wise, you're gonna have some issues with adoption. So we jumped into the ad writing tool, Jesse and Rob. We talked a little bit about kind of Empower Fresh, but let's give it a proper introduction. And maybe Rob, this one's to you. Can you succinctly share kind of Empower Fresh and the value proposition, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into some of the tech-powered solutions within it.
Well, I think the biggest value prop in it is the combination of the benefits it brings, right? So it's going to bring different benefits based on what type of operator, what type of manager you are, whether it's reduction in shrink, smaller coolers, or increase in sales for those who think they control shrink by missing sales and running out. And then just achieving access to the data in real time. I mean, most of the things that I use, so I worked in the produce department pretty much all through the 90s, right, and into the 2000s. Most of the processes are still there, and this is 2025, right? So it doesn't have to be that way. We've always lived in the rear view mirror. We always sit down at the first of the month, we analyze the last 30 days. How do we not make those mistakes? And I think because of the variability, the perishability, and the millions of UPCs per item and the different things that we deal with in produce, we just always felt like it wasn't achievable until now. And so because it exists, like, we need to reap the benefits, because it does happen to be the one department where you can fill your basket up just by, paying attention to and putting a lot of effort into. It's easy for us to win the mac and cheese and the milk. It's not easy for Walmart to win the strawberries and the bananas, right? We'll forever have that, and we need to play more into it. We need to embrace technology to feed it. So
you shared.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you both shared your backgrounds, but I think you just touched on something, Robert, that we hadn't talked about yet. You both came out of produce, but independent, right? As opposed to Walmart. So you're not adapting or adopting a tool for a large multinational chain for smaller independents. Can you speak about sort of that aspect of the solution? And because I think a lot of times independents have so much on their plate, and they're oftentimes new solutions come into the marketplace, and they work for larger chains, but they're not working for the smaller stores. So speak a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, and oftentimes what they're doing in the bigger chains is either proprietary to them or so expensive that the independents don't have the option to even adopt it or embrace it. That's been the difference in the past that Jesse alluded to, but it's not that way any longer. As we all know, technologies advance rapidly, and as they advance, they become less costly. But look, our founder who dreamed up this idea, Anthony Tata, like, he grew up in his grandpa's little independent grocery store on Independence Avenue here in Kansas City. I grew up in Kansas City. We are a stronghold of independence. We've had multiple, from Dolls to Dolgens to others, come in and not survive here. So it's just in our blood. Jesse grew up in Cub and several others with his dad. Like, it's in our blood. Yeah, we have a little chain experience, but I want to see Price Choppers of the world hold up their corner. Aldi's going to do what Aldi does. None of us control that, right? There's a big difference. And so that, from my perspective, that's what drives us as a team right there.
And if you don't mind, I'll dovetail off of Rob there a little bit. A lot of those big box chains, Michael, they're either developing their own, like Target has developed their own AI. Kroger has done the same. Albertsons has partnered with somebody to bring AI. All those large companies, they're either developing out of their own at the cost of millions and millions and massive IT teams, which they have the resources to do that. Or they're partnering with somebody to drive that. And that's really what's driven the AI tech into the fresh sector is the larger corporations see the need, and they've been driving that. And really at Empower Fresh, our goal is you'll never see us at any of the big corporations. We're 100% for the independent retailer. We're taking that technology that they may have helped drive, but we're trying to provide that to the independent retail world to keep everybody at a level playing field. And honestly, guys, if the independents lose and we shrink out, and ultimately the consumer loses, because now they're going to be stuck with one of the major corporations setting retails and prices, and not having that local flavor like the independents bring to the world. So we're trying to support that and keep the independents on a level playing field with the big guys.
Yeah, and that's one of the key reasons we were excited when we first started talking about our Red Oval partnership. Of it's nice when things work for the big guys, but when something is designed and developed specifically for independence, we always take a little bit more notice than otherwise. So I just want to make sure that our audience heard this piece and understood it and knew your focus versus we touch the whole industry and we'll help independents, but our focus isn't there. Your focus is clearly on the independents first, foremost, and exclusively, which is a huge benefit. So let's move on a little bit. We talked a little bit about ad writing, but let's talk about kind of I guess upstream about AI assisted ordering. So can you speak a little bit about how that works and how you're using that to help reduce shrink and all that stuff?
Yeah, Rob, I'll start. You feel free to dovetail in as you see fit. But everybody's semi-familiar with AI, or the AI. The easiest way you can explain AI is a lot of computer algorithms in the past were just what else or what if. Hey, if A, then we do action B. AI is a whole network of those, and you have different outcome possibilities based on the prompts you're putting in, and then you can train it. You can teach it, hey, this is a bad answer, this is a good answer, this is why. Everybody's somewhat, that's kind of what AI is, or a simple explanation of that. Everybody's familiar with ChatGPT. If you're not, please use ChatGPT to do SOPs and Excel sheets and all. It can do anything for you. If you're not using ChatGPT, you're probably wasting time building reports and things that AI could do for you. But ChatGPT it's called OpenAI, and it's called OpenAI because the source is open. It's the open web. It's the internet. So you can get bad information out of ChatGPT because there's bad information on the internet. So what we're doing is we're using what's you don't say, right? I know, shocking.
Yeah.
We're using.
So what's the term? Hallucination.
Hallucination. There's all kinds of terms you could throw at that one, Michael. We're using narrow AI. Narrow AI it's meant to go to town on just your information. So what we try to do when we connect with customers, we're asking for 3 years history for the sole purpose of building that narrow AI. It's a form of regenerative narrow AI that we've built. And narrow AI is extremely effective at forecasting, at building and identifying trends, seasonality, price points. Right now, our AI, our narrow AI use is in the 90 percentile within one case accuracy on anything that we're forecasting. in the produce department. So that's incredibly accurate. So just think, your brand new hire that has next to nothing as far as the training goes. They can be incredibly effective out of the gate. Your produce manager can go on vacation. Your third person can come in and write a very effective order. It's not all on the shoulders of the produce manager anymore. Heck, assistant store director can come over and write an effective order in produce if need be. So it makes it more versatile. It doesn't put it all on the shoulders of one person. It makes it transferable to other people. So you're not, caught on days off or vacations or sick days going through COVID with people missing weeks at a time. That goes away.
Well, yeah, I think people in the industry definitely like the idea of vacations, being able to go on vacation.
Yes. A lot of the guys we're working with, their produce managers were coming in on their day off. And then if they were around during a vacation, they would come in the 3-4 mornings that they had to write orders, just so they wouldn't have to clean up a mess when they came back. So you eliminate that. You can, anybody that can take a soft inventory is an incredibly effective order writer at this point.
So one of the things that comes up anytime we talk about AI is, the fear of being eliminated or losing your job. So
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how, how to calm those fears?
Yeah, I'll say we got that a lot too as we were developing and building with certain partners. We were going out into the stores working directly with the produce managers, and that was the #1 comment. Oh, so you're replacing me. I'm teaching you to replace me so they can fire me. And that's 100% not true. AI will never really replace anybody, but it'll make that one person much more effective and be able to do tasks across many planes versus, hey, this is one thing that I do. Now they could write an order in multi-departments. They could do other tasks with the assistance of AI. AI always will depend on user input. As things go into the future and bots and cameras evolve, that could change, or somebody could manage those systems rather than being out there collecting all the information yourself. But it's always going to need human input. It's never going to replace anybody. But we'll get to the end quote page eventually here. If somebody adapts to AI, they could replace somebody who refuses to adapt to AI, because AI is going to make that person much more effective. So it's not going to replace anybody, but it's going to promote the people that leverage it.
Great. I'll pay attention to that. Now that we know we went through AI, so how does this system, the narrow AI, help with ordering?
Yeah. So again, we're going to town on your history to identify those trends to help build that really accurate forecast. Guys, we've gone to great lengths to the point where one of the things that impacts perishable departments is actually secondary displays. Hey, if you got another display of strawberries or blueberries, or pick an item, clementines, you're going to sell a lot more. And that's one thing we can't get from the history. We can get all your sales, we can get your movement, we can get your price points, but we don't know what was on display. So we've actually synthetically gone back through your data, procured that information, and go, hey, on these 20 blueberry ads, we see 1, 2, and 7, they got a 35% lift, and it's not related to a date or a holiday or anything like that. We're going to go and assume that's on a secondary display. So now in the tool, when produce manager goes, hey, I'm building this display of blueberries or strawberries or whatever it is, we're going to go back and go, aha, okay, anytime he does that, this is the lift that's going to drive, and we're going to forecast that. So again, it's going to, Rob alluded to this earlier, the produce manager that has the best conditions and the best sales, but he runs a higher shrink because he's carrying extra inventory, we're going to eliminate a lot of his backroom inventory. We're going to increase his turns. It's going to be truck to shelf. We're going to reduce his food waste. We're going to reduce his shrink. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, where you have guys that run the greatest shrink in the company, but it's at the cost of conditions, it's at the cost of in stock, and they're controlling their sales. So for those guys, we're actually not going to help them with their shrink as much. We're going to help them more with sales. And I know retailers get sold a bill of goods, every day. Oh, we can save you this much money. But this is true. These are true customer experiences, what we've experienced through data and running pilot groups with our current customers. We're getting anywhere from a 6-to-1 to a 14-to-1 ROI versus the cost of the product. And even if I just gave you a 2-to-1, it more than paid for itself, but we're exceeding that immensely. The biggest gain potential is typically in shrink. It's not always, it varies by store, but it's typically in shrink by eliminating a lot of human error. We do help your in-stock position by accurate forecasting. So you're going to eliminate almost all of your out of stocks, human error out of stocks. We're going to pull a lot of the dead inventory out of the stores, which again increases turns, frees up dollars. That's going to help you again with your shrink. And then speaking from experience here too, guys, markdowns. Produce managers are infamous for not wanting to run out of that key front page item. So back in my past life, we were self-supplied, and I was running the retail side. A counterpart of mine ran the wholesale side. When we implemented AI, it eliminated about 25% of our pulls on those front page ad items. And on the retail side, I didn't lose any sales. I was still selling the same or greater. What it told me is the guys were just, they were scared of running out. They were carrying all this extra inventory on those key items because they didn't want to run out. And then they were reducing it, aging it, trying to get it out of the store. So we're eliminating almost all of your human error markdowns needed by, having extra on hand because you're afraid of running out. And then there's a ton of labor efficiency gains from not having to rotate in the cooler because it's in and out, and not touching things 3 or 4 times, and not spending an hour to an hour and a half on an order. You can get your order time down to 30 minutes or less with AI and a few simple inputs. So there's a lot of labor efficiency gains. And of course, as we talk to retailers, we're like, hey, put that back into the store. Don't pull it out of your labor budget. Make your most important person, your best person, your produce manager, put him back on the sales floor. He should be talking to customers. He should be merchandising, building displays. He should be, out there calling and rotating and making sure everything the way it should, it's running the way it should, not, spending time in the back room or in the cooler trying to manage all the inventory and all the orders. So it really puts your aces in the best spot they should be, what they should be doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because customer service is at a premium, and most shoppers kind of, as we talked about, shop habitually, and if there's questions and there's no one around, right, those questions don't get answered. And so that operational efficiency part and putting more time on the selling floor is huge.
It is. How are we doing on time, Michael?
I think we got about just under probably another 7 minutes, and then we can open it up for questions.
Rob, do you want to kind of talk about the future of the store tomorrow, where things are already heading?
Sure. I think this is something retailers are now dealing with almost on the daily. Someone trying to sell them an AI of some sort. And I think it's because, as I mentioned earlier, the solutions are getting affordable. So people are developing them around the different areas in which they can enhance businesses, not just grocery, but businesses, all across the board. So that makes it inevitable. Like we're all going to accept it as part of our lives because it's going to become inevitable, right? And it's funny, we are always looking forward, like our focus, we're the best in produce. We will always be the best in produce. We will always present in produce the best value of anybody out there on the tech side, right? But we're also developing in the other departments. We will expand. Our vision is to help the independents the best way we can. So so our forward-looking team, we're looking at things out there. I mean, right now, we have someone take a soft inventory, and then our system and our AI, it tells you what to order. I don't see a reason why that isn't eliminated in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So what you see here is just kind of a vision, right? There's already a combination of either cameras clipped on shelf racks or robots roaming up and down aisles, or even drones cruising around with LiDAR scanners taking inventory. All of these types of systems just feed directly into Empower Fresh, and then Empower Fresh tells you what to order. And you quickly become a tech-driven, and not just in one department, in all of them, it's tech-driven. You got tech being accountable for what's on shelf en route, and then you got tech being accountable and telling you what to order and replace. And suddenly it's managing the movement throughout the store, and you're in that 90% above accuracy ratio as to what you need when you're ordering across the board. And now you've got the same worker staff, and you can really drive home. I mean, someone has to stock the shelves, but those people can constantly be in and on the floor and around customers. And now you can start doing other things that you really wish you had time to do in the store, and utilizing these technologies at a very small fraction of what a person costs you to do these duties. And I think it's just inevitable. We're not, like I said, we're not the only tech company doing it. We've talked to many potential customers who already are piloting robots or cameras and things.
Yep.
So everybody together is moving fast at this. And we will all collide to deliver a solution that is one of the greatest that these grocers have seen. And that's where we're headed.
Yeah, and I'll emphasize what Rob is saying. The tech already exists. It's already out there. It's just a matter of time before it all goes end to end.
So one of the things that I know, having played around with AI, and I teach a data-driven marketing class on the graduate level. AI can only be as good as the data that goes into it, right? I know a lot of times independents are concerned about the way the data is structured, or they don't have proper data. We talked earlier about the multiple implementations you have. What's needed to get started, and how do you work with probably a huge variety of different data sets?
I think this is where another area where we're really unique, because we know there's going to be lots of variables in the data we're going to receive. We have to receive data from wholesalers and vendors. We have to receive data from the retailers themselves. We have to receive data from some back office, some front system. So to your point, we have to be versatile. And I think because we have this a really good blend of tech experience in a lot of different things, one of them legacy systems that seem to exist in a lot of these independent grocery stores, it has allowed us to build what I will call universal tools for connecting these data sets. But even with the universal tools, sometimes it can be challenging when you're messing with legacy systems. But again, we either have them internally, or we partner with some great companies across the nation that's what they do best, and they help us deliver this data back and forth.
Great. I'm getting a couple of questions from the audience, so we'll move on to that real quick. Can you explain? We talked about wholesalers and data connections in there, and one of the benefits, I think you mentioned it, Jesse, of local and independence is that local piece of it. So how do local farms, how does local plug in to this system?
Yeah, it all depends on, I guess, kind of what local is. If that's coming through a wholesaler, those are easy connections. We're hooked up with a partner in North Dakota that they have a lot of local potato growers. So we were able to connect directly with them, get invoices, everything we needed from them. There's lots of local greenhouse type of folks who we can also connect with and get invoices, which is really what we need to complete the cycle on our side. But then there's a handful of those smaller guys like, hey, he grows corn for a month or two, and that's all he does, and he hands us a paper slip of an invoice. So obviously in those types of situations where we can't connect with somebody via paper slip, we give the produce manager the ability just to enter in those one-off type invoices and go, hey, gross profit farms, I bought 40 cases of corn yesterday, and here was the cost. And that way it hits the system, and we have visibility to it. So we try to leave it open-ended for any of the smaller type locals that are important, but they're also really they're hot and heavy, but for a very short amount of time during the year is what's fairly typical with the small guys.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, can you give us a specific example of how your technology has been implemented at another grocer? Something they're looking for, yeah, perfect.
This is, and actually, you know what? The more I think about this, the more we're actually missing a handful of folks on here too. We've had some recent signees and additions to this, but if you recognize anybody out here, I encourage you to give them a phone call. BR Stores was our original development partner. They've helped us along the way. We've had a lot of great ROI success with the Pruitt's organization down in Oklahoma. So they've been on our tool 6 months or so now. Lowe's is a larger independent out in Texas. We're excited to, we just actually got rolling with those guys from a pilot standpoint. And then we got guys on the East Coast, guys in the Midwest, all over the place, where we're either in a pilot or full customer stage with right now. So like I said, right now the ROIs, and when I say ROI, I'm talking about an improvement in gross margin dollars. Is the ROI I'm using. So anywhere from 6 to 1 to 14 to 1. And what is feeding that is multiple things. It's growth in sales will feed that. And we've seen that fairly consistently across the board. The biggest growth or margin capture is through shrink. That's the largest portion of what you're going to save is going to be through shrink. And then you're going to eliminate a lot of what we used to call paper shrink, but markdowns, et cetera. And then the immeasurables are all the labor savings and efficiencies where you don't have to touch things in the cooler multiple times, and you're saving 30 minutes per order, 45 minutes per order, or you don't have to scan out your shrink because we're telling you what your shrink is. And you can identify all your shrink. We're handing it to you on a platter, whether that's by store or by category or whole company. We can tell you exactly where all your inefficiencies are, and we do that through business alerts at each location. But it gives you visibility into those things, which is invaluable. Rob alluded to it before. Everybody's always looking in the rear view mirror, trying to run a sales to purchase, trying to figure out where you're at for that period. And then, I think we're roughly here. This is how I'm going to move my ad 3 weeks down the road. There's no more guessing. There's no more looking in the rear view mirror. You know where you are financially from a margin shrink standpoint and a billing standpoint, live real time, because we have the store's inventories plugged in every time they write an order. And that is very valuable to future facing decisions. So you're making your business more nimble.
Great. So I think we have time for 2 more questions, and I'll take these. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should ask you guys? Rob, I'll let you go first.
The one thing people don't typically like to talk about is cost, and you didn't ask about cost. But I'm going to answer it in a really simple way, or a couple of simple ways. It's about a couple of cases of produce is the cost of this software per week at your store. You can look at it also for the cost of us to optimize your salad case and start making money there and no waste. We do the same thing for the entire department, right? So, that would be the one thing we didn't discuss. Jesse, I'll let you maybe pick the other.
Sure. I would say onboarding from the time we connect with you guys, that can take as little as a couple of months, 3 months. Or if we're connecting to multiple vendors, the more we add, the longer that will go. But right now we're connected with a lot of major produce houses in the Midwest and throughout the U.S. So the more we're connected, the easier it is for me to connect stores, because I can just call, whatever wholesaler it is and go, hey, add this group or add these stores. Yeah, hey, sure, yep, sure, they're on. You're getting their information now. So as we grow, that process expedites as well. And really, guys, there's the program pays more than pays for itself. It's incredible. So the longer you're waiting to make a decision on these things, because retailers do tend to, because you're doing so many things at once, it can take longer to get organized and make those decisions. So the longer it takes to make a decision, that's the longer you ran a 2%, 3% higher shrink than you had to. So just think of a 2% shrink savings in the produce department, what that would mean for you financially, a 3% shrink savings. All those are very easily achievable.
Great. And then my last question was going to be, okay, what's the next steps? How do people get in touch with you? But you beat me to it with this last slide. So thank you for being proactive on that, because I know that's a question that we always get from attendees, is what next? So for those of you who have joined us, we're at time. I'd like to thank Rob and Jesse from Empower Fresh, one of our IGA Red Oval partners, for taking us through a little bit more about not only their solution, but what's happening within the fresh and produce categories, and specifically. We will send out a version of this presentation via email to those who attended, which will include the contact information here. But if you have any questions in the meantime, obviously sales@empowerfresh.com, scan the QR code, or feel free to reach out to myself on the IGA side. So thanks, Rob and Jesse, appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing the solution implemented in some of our IGA stores real soon, so that we can actually have some of our case studies incorporated in the next conversation. So thanks, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.